Good morning. Can you hear me? Good. I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit. I may have turned it down, which I did, so I'm going to turn it up.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're good to go here. I'm going to get out of the way. This is Grace and Anna, and they have some questions for you. And I'm going to turn on the camera. Are you?
Okay.
Can you?
Yes, I am.
Can you see them now?
I can kind of see them. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now
Yeah.
we've lost you, but I'm sure you'll come back.
Okay.
So let's see what happens. It says to add more people. I don't want that. I'm going to close that. And let's see. We're still going.
Okay.
All right, we've lost you, but we're going to continue. All right. There we go. Okay. All right, these two young ladies are going to ask you some questions. We appreciate you taking your time out of your day to do this. They're doing a project on child labor for National History Day.
Oh, that's good. Great.
All right, girls, go.
So the theme this year is taking a stand in history. How do you think the National Child Labor Committee and with Lewis Hines' help took a stand against child labor?
Yeah, I think they really helped a lot. As you know, it sounds like you may know, Lewis Hines really did a lot as far as photography and really bringing a lot of attention to the child labor or the child labor reform movement through his photographs of the situations that existed across the country. So, I mean that really brought the issue to the attention of people that would have otherwise not been aware of that situation, and really helped mobilize public opinion against child labor. So I think that he really had a key role in doing that. So I think that was very important. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have any historical context from that time period?
Anything specifically?
Well, why did child labor become a common place?
Sure. So I think, what I understand, it kind of grew up as part of in the post-Civil War time frame in the United States, as there was greater industrialization and there was the ability to make work simpler. So operating machines could be made fairly simple, allowing children who in the past, didn't have the ability to, create garments and things by hand, but they could operate these relatively simple machines. So that created the opportunity for child labor or increased child labor where it didn't exist before to the same extent. I mean, there's always been some child labor, but the fact you have these machines that could be operated as fairly simply by children really increased the potential for child labor.
From your perspective, what did employers see in children that made them valuable employees?
Well, some of it was, I would say, about the money. I mean, children would work relatively cheaper than adults. That was at least the belief. That's the common belief, is why it was popular during that time frame. There's also, at the time, there were arguments that, well, employers were wanting to help keep children away from idleness and from, if the children aren't working, the concern, they'll be, out there getting into trouble and that sort of thing. But it seems now most historians say that it was really about the economic impact of having, children in the workplace, and also the families the parents in a lot of cases had interest in wanting some extra income, and having their children put into the workplace helped get them a little bit extra, obviously, money if they could have their children work.
So we see lots of examples of child labor in the South and the industrial area of the United States. Were there examples of child labor along the West Coast?
That's a good question. It's something that I didn't look into in my research for my thesis. I can't recall, further than the Midwest in the time frame that I was looking at. I mean, I would think there would have been to some extent, but honestly, that's not something that I looked at very much. But you would think there would be to a certain extent.
Were there other groups who stood against child labor? How did their stand make an impact on the eventual passage of the Fair Labor Standards Act?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was overall, there was a lot of public support for the child labor movement, and I think as a result of the publicity that the NCLC brought forth, that really helped out. But what really ended up, that's basically what led to the passage of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Of course, as I don't know, as you may know, it was delayed as a result of some Supreme Court decisions over a period of years that said, federal child labor laws were unconstitutional. That really delayed the implementation of that law, I would say.
So what was the political impact?
What would you say would be the political impact of children being taken out of the factories, or was there any?
I think at the time that occurred, child labor was already starting to fall off in a lot of areas, just because there was increased emphasis on education during that time period, which when the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed, it only impacted children that were engaged in interstate commerce. So it didn't cover all child laborers as well. So it wasn't the impact of it because of that, and also because child labor was naturally declining in society as a whole, was a bit less than certainly it would have if it had been put into place 20 years sooner. But by that time, there was widespread support for this, and people had seen that the businesses could operate with diminished child labor, and it wasn't as large of an issue, I would say by that point.
What was the social impact of child labor?
There were a lot of impacts in terms of the children, in some cases, had a different relationship, I think, with their parents than you see today, because a lot of times, or at least in certain situations, parents were counting on their children to earn money in order to support the family, which is obviously, I think, different than generally you would see today. So that created some issues as far as how the family operates. I mean, normally parents have this relationship with their child where they're not relying upon them to bring in income. So the fact that parents had to rely upon children was definitely created strain sometimes, like if you want to discipline a child or those sorts of things. But when they're bringing in income that's vital to the household, it kind of creates a different situation. And also, as far as parents would in most cases take the entire paycheck from the child and give back a certain amount, as an allowance back to them. So that created some different situations than you see today as well. Also, though, in certain cases, children were helpers for the parents, at the job, in the mill or in the mines, where the child wasn't technically an employee, but maybe the father may have been paid based on how much coal they were able to mine, and that obviously is a bit different relationship as well, since it's a kind of a coworker type relationship versus a parent-child. So that was another thing as well. But in terms of like the mills, like the cotton mills, there was a lot of talk about it was much of a family environment in a lot of cases where the mom would be in the mill and the children would work there too. So there was kind of a blending in some cases between the workplace and the home environment, and also like disciplining employees. Like the mill owner, a lot of times wouldn't discipline the child if there was something going wrong. That would be seen as the parent's responsibility to intervene. As far as if there was a problem with that child in the workplace, it would be the parent's responsibility to get their child under control. And also with the home-based businesses, when children were working in the homes alongside the parents, that also created a different dynamic where it wasn't clear when was the child was really a child, or when they were working just alongside the parent in the home. So that's all very different than today, I'd say.
Was there an economic impact?
Of child labor or of the decline?
Child labor.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. I mean, I think there's different opinions on this. I mean, some think that children weren't really worth the trouble because they weren't as productive generally as grown adults in the workplace, and there was more potential for accidents, and that perhaps the benefits of child labor weren't as great to the business as you may think, because they could pay them less, but they also were less productive, and they also had much more likelihood to create accidents in the workplace that could hurt them or hurt somebody else in the workplace. But so it's a little unclear, but I guess the fact that it did exist for a lengthy period of time would make me think that there was some economic benefit to the employers of having children in the workplace, or they wouldn't have been there, I would say.
Was there an economic impact when the Fair Labor Standards Act went into place? Was there more of an impact then?
So, yeah, there was an impact on that, but there had been, since there was the previous law that was based upon a tax, that was the law of the land for a period of about a year before it was overturned by the Supreme Court. At that point, a lot of mills and other employers had already started phasing out their children. So when the Supreme Court overturned that law and it went back into place, a lot of businesses didn't re-employ children, even though they could legally. So as a result of that, when the Fair Labor Standards Act goes into effect, there already had been a reduction in child labor, which lessened the economic impact that the law had, I would say.
Okay.
Did elected officials agree with the actions of the committee and Lewis Hine?
So in general, I would say yes, but there were certainly people, particularly in Pennsylvania and other states, that had large concentrations of child labor. So Pennsylvania, because of the mines and the coal mines, and in the South, where there were some politicians that were very much opposed to any sort of actions to cut down on child labor. So I would say generally politicians were supportive, certainly in the North and in most areas throughout the country. But there were pockets where there was a lot of child labor activity where the politicians weren't supportive of it. But overall, they were, as you see by the fact that the federal laws did pass that supported child labor. So you did have some people that either thought child labor was an issue for the states to deal with, and the federal government shouldn't be involved in it, or that thought basically child labor was good for the children. There was a smaller group of politicians that believed that, but there were some that thought that. But a lot of it at the federal government level was more that they thought it should be the states responsible for laws that would impact child labor, not the federal government.
Would the legislation have happened without the pictures that Lewis Hine took?
I think that's probably difficult to say. I think it expedited the process. It made it a lot easier for people to understand, and he was very effective from the pictures and from what I understand. From talking, I was actually in Lowell, Massachusetts a few years ago, and they had the textile museum up there, and talked to the people at the library there. So he was very effective at. They said he was very effective at making the pictures, make the situation look very sympathetic to people on the outside. So I think that really helped mobilize public opinion, because a lot of what people may have seen was like, people, the newsies handing out newspapers on the corner if you're in an urban area, but you may not have seen, the children in the mines. You wouldn't have seen, the age of some of the children and working elsewhere, and the conditions that they were in without Lewis Hines. So I think he helped move it along. I mean, I think eventually child labor would have been outlawed anyways, but I think Lewis Hines brought a lot of attention to it sooner and helped move along the process quicker than it otherwise would have.
The girls are doing a documentary on the topic. If you were designing a documentary, what would be the absolute most important things or topic areas that would need to be covered?
I think here. I think understanding the factors that contributed to child labor. So I think sometimes people first think of it, the mill owners, they really were greedy and they wanted to, get these children. But there's also the part of the parents, in a lot of cases, pushed children, wanted their children to be working, and acted very much in ways that circumvented the child labor laws. So it wasn't just one party or the other, and also children in the surveys that do exist. I mean, children generally preferred working. Now, they didn't understand the harm that would do to them later on by, working in a mill instead of getting their education. But the surveys I've seen that do exist indicate that children prefer to work. So I think understanding all the factors that went into it, I think would be a key thing to cover. And also, I think, like you mentioned, Lewis Hines and the impact of him is another important area to discuss as well. I would say, and then some of the things that lead to the decline of child labor, and that is society, some societal shifts. I would say both. I should say, going back, that what leads to the increase is in terms of industrialization, and then also what ends up leading to its decline would be some of the key things I'd say to cover in that.
Okay. Anything else that would be important for the girls to know?
Well, I think just that this is really, I think it's a really interesting topic that you guys that you're looking into. So it's really great, and I think there's still cases like it's kind of strange. Like the United States has kind of moved away from child labor, but of course, around the world, there are different countries in different situations where you still have some of the same issues you may see today, which is kind of interesting when you look at where we were, 125 years ago, and you compare it to some other countries. around the world. There's kind of some parallels there. I think that's an interesting thing to consider. But I think it's a great thing that you're doing this project. I think it'll be really great.
Well, we're winding up our research, and we're so glad that we found that article. Do you have, by any chance, a copy of that Cosmopolitan article from 1906, or would you know where we could find it?
I have the link to it on the internet. I think I can find that.
Okay, that would be awesome, because that led me to you. So that was what we
Oh,
were
okay.
looking for initially. So thank you very much today. We really
Okay.
appreciate all your time. And when we get this put together, we'll share it with you.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you. Hope you have a good day.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.